Awesome. Thank you, Jared.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. I typically don't need a microphone, so I'm going to stand way back. But if you can't hear me, let me know. So yeah, I was super excited when Jeremy asked me to speak with you all. I've heard about Creative Mornings, but actually this is my first time being here. So, and when he told me about the theme, Restart, I did smile, because I think that has been a theme not just for me in the last year and a half, but throughout my life. I think maybe most of us can kind of relate to restarting in one way or another. So we're going to get to the grant and what that's all about, but I think just a little kind of foundation about who I am will help you to figure out how I got there and why Restart is a part of that story. So I actually started out my life, well, I'll say my life starting at 20. I don't think we have to go back to when I was born. But 20 because I was in college and really wanted to study, you know, the arts. I really thought I'd work for a record label. You know, I was really excited to be around the creative process, but never actually considered myself a creative. You know, that's changed because I think everyone's creative. We are the architects of our own life. But I thought that that's what I would do and be until I interned at Capitol Records, and everybody was like stressed out, and it was paperwork and it was all that. I'm like, this isn't what I want to do. I want to be around the cool people. So I was at UC and decided to study communications, which you know, doesn't actually train you to do anything, but I think it prepares you for a lot in life. And I thought my calling was always just kind of talking to people in whatever form that took. So it, for me, took early on being in sales. And I enjoyed the process, but was never super passionate about anything I was selling. But you all might remember the days of pre-press houses. I don't know if we still have those anymore. But my first kind of iteration into, you know, printing and publishing was working for a pre-press house and selling that to clients who needed that kind of high-end film. Well, we didn't really have digital back then. I don't want to date myself too much, but then the best job that I got was working for a magazine. And I sold advertising in that magazine, but I loved it. It was a young men's lifestyle, skateboarding, snowboarding magazine. I was 30. I was the oldest one there. Even my boss was, I think, 25, you know. But I loved it and got to meet amazing people from around the country. And what's also important to note at this time is that I have the disease of addiction. And my disease was developing throughout this time. I was diagnosed with severe migraines my senior year of college. And so I went to what was then the Cincinnati Headache Institute and was giving narcotic pain medication pretty much off the rip. And it worked for my headaches, but I also learned that it worked for other pain, emotional, mental, spiritual pain. And it wasn't until my mom got diagnosed with terminal cancer that I began to use it, I would say abuse it, and use it just whenever I didn't want to face what was right in front of me, which was watching my mom die. And in the process of her having cancer, this was when OxyContin really came on the market in '97. So it was everywhere. And so I stayed pretty numb through that 8 months. And when my mom passed away, I found myself with a pretty big habit and pretty big tolerance and now lack of access. So I began, just buying pills from whoever, but my career was thriving. So it's kind of this, like, how can you be great at this when you're suffering with this? I think I just compartmentalized that a lot and didn't. The addiction is the disease that doesn't want you to think you're sick. It wants you to just kind of, you're okay. And because I was making good money, my family, friends, partner, nobody knew how sick I was really getting because I was quote unquote functional. Functional is a relative term. But so I found myself, after that particular magazine, working for a graffiti magazine based out of DC, which was awesome, because this is when graffiti art was really just being legitimized. Shepard Fairey did our logo, and, he was just beginning to work with clients like Mountain Dew and, the X Games. And, so graffiti art was becoming understood and accepted as a legitimate art form instead of just, what do they call it? A blight on the landscape, So, but anyway, those were the jobs that I loved the most, was working for these publications. But as my disease developed, I became less functional. And in 2009, I went to the Center for Addiction Treatment to get help, to detox, and to get off of all the medications and to see where my headaches really were, and to see if I could live without that physical dependence. Well, you can't undo 30 days, or you can't undo 20 years in 30 days. So it wasn't long after I finished that program that I did relapse. And it was there, and while I was in there, that I was introduced to heroin. Because most of the people I was in there with, again, I think I was the oldest one there, and they were in their young, early 20s, and they were all in there for heroin addiction. And when I relapsed, my access to narcotic pain medication had been cut off. So I reached out to, I'll say not a friend, but an acquaintance in the treatment facility, and he introduced me to heroin. It wasn't long before I became an intravenous drug user. And in 2010, I was caught using heroin in my car, and that is a felony offense. So now I had escalating addiction and a felony charge. This was not where I saw myself in my early 40s. This is not where I saw myself or what I thought I would be. I think we all have different definitions of what success for ourselves will be, or what we want to do when we grow up or be. But this certainly wasn't anything or a place that I thought that I would be. And so I think my shame in that made me very judgmental. And it took me a lot to peel back the layers of those judgments to find my humanity and to see others and their suffering and to see them as people and to see myself. Because we compartmentalize what we do for our addiction and we put it somewhere else. Some will steal, prostitute. And for me, I found myself, after going through the process of the criminal justice system, in and out of jail for my probation violations because I couldn't get well their way. Talk therapy was not going to make me well. I needed a higher level of care. But every time I didn't get well, I was thrown back in jail for therapeutic incarceration, they called it. So for one charge, I have 8 mugshots. So I was eventually sent to prison for 6 months because I couldn't get well their way. I was very angry because I felt, of course I was being punished for being sick. But only in retrospect do I understand my anger. Because at the time, I was just angry. I felt broken. Why can't I get this recovery thing? Why can't I get it? What's wrong with me? Am I just so broken? Have I just been in an active addiction for so many years that I am beyond beyond the ability to get recovery. So when I got out of prison, I'd love to tell you that this is when my life started and I, got better and came out kicking ass and taking names. But the reality is I kicked my own ass and forgot my own name. I became homeless, back in active addiction, and panhandling on the side of the road to survive. I was unemployable, broken, angry. I didn't want to die, but I didn't know how to live, And it was an act of kindness from a woman who pulled over. I was panhandling out in front of the Crossroads Church in Oakley thinking, these good Christian folks might want to help somebody in my position after a heartwarming service. But most of them just drove by and looked ahead, didn't make eye contact or acknowledge me standing on the side of the road in the dead of winter crying my eyes out. Except a woman in a gold minivan who pulled over and had kids in the car. And she didn't just roll her window out and give me a couple bucks. She stopped, got in her back seat, rustled around a little bit, got out, and handed me a sweater. A sweater. A sweater changed my life. You know why? Because all the years I spent not wanting to be seen and hiding, and because I didn't want you to see my pain or my trauma or my addiction or my felonious past, I stood on that corner begging to be seen. And no one looked except her. I guess that's not true. People would stop by, maybe a couple bucks here, a couple bucks there, but it was that sweater that cracked open something in me that said, you know what? See, God is a part of my story. Has been throughout my life. I believe my higher power has tried to give me gifts my whole life, and I didn't either see them, I walked past them, or I gave them back. But this was one of those gifts, like the light came down, and it's a big red bow, and it just was this moment, because I believe our life changes in moments, right? Life is made up of moments. And this was a moment that forever changed mine. Because all that had been planted by my higher power in my heart opened up. And I said, this is not the life that God wants for me. This is not why I'm here. This is not why I was given the privilege of a college education. And I got in a recovery treatment program within 2 weeks. December 15th, I'll be sober for 4 years. Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, that is a huge accomplishment for me when I couldn't get 6 months under my belt, ever, But I was a patient gardener in my recovery. I'm usually one of those people that I want what I want, and I want it now, or I get excited and I want to do it and do it. I'm still that way. But in my recovery, I was given this patience to just walk the walk. I began volunteering in the jail to help other women who were recovering from heroin addiction. And I started working at that very treatment center that I went to all those years ago. And I was patient. I knew that there would be more. In my heart, I knew there would be more. But I was content with what I had, and that was very rare for me, to just be content with what I had. Because I always wanted something more, always. And it's not that I didn't want more, it was that I was content with what I had. And I decided to dedicate my life to helping other people get through this process, in whatever form that took. If that meant talking to a young man with his garbage bag of clothes coming out of detox in the middle of the night saying he's got to leave, and just talking with him and getting him back to bed for another day. Or if it meant being a peer supporter inside the jail. See, jails are really different than prison. Jails are like pretrial. They're detention centers. They were never meant to be corrections or rehabilitation. Just detaining you until you are sentenced to your program, to your prison, to your probation. We have one of the top 25 largest jails in our urban core at the Hamilton County Justice Center by Jack's Casino, if you don't know it. We release on average about 80 people a day. And one of the frustrations that arose for me that kept tickling the back of my mind was that I get to go in there every week, which is great, and I'm privileged and blessed to do that, but I only get to work with 16 women, and there's 1,400 people in this facility. And they're not the only ones suffering, not the only ones in need. So how can I reach them? This is when my higher power handed me another gift wrapped in a big red bow with a light coming down. And that was an idea, a low-tech, old-school solution to this persistent problem of mass incarceration, the heroin epidemic, et cetera, et cetera. And my idea was to create a newspaper. What if we could distribute a newspaper inside this facility and put the local resources, our social service resources in here that I found difficult to navigate when I was in need, and do a nice condensed version for everything from the local shelters to food pantries to how to get a job with a criminal charge to how to further your education to where are the closest AA meetings, a phone number you can call, advocacy groups, legal aid. Wouldn't that be cool? So literally the same day I had the idea, I had gotten off, I was working third shift, so I got off at 7:30. I had this awesome idea, and this is where the creative process is so beautiful, because I think all of us have really cool ideas at one time or another, right? But do we have the resources, ability, and confidence to bring it to life? I honestly had none of those things. I was just super excited about the potential to reach more people. And I went in and told the lady I was volunteering with, who was an art therapist, and she's like, I think it's a fantastic idea, and I think I know who will fund you. There's this cool place called People's Liberty, and they fund people and their ideas. She goes, I went in there for a one-on-one last week, and I'm not eligible because I'm already a 501c3, but you should go. And I think there's like 10 days left to apply for this grant. I am not shitting you. This is where, confidence to carry out didn't play in the equation, because I had 10 days, The confidence and courage came with looking them up that day and scheduling a one-on-one to go see if my idea was even eligible. I tried to read about what was eligible and what wasn't. I feared working with like the sheriff's department or inside the jail would like disqualify us. But I met this beautiful little French girl named Aurore Bonnier. Hope I spell that right or say that right, but I hope I don't offend her when I do her little accent, because it's so cute. This is totally something we would find. That sounds more German, right? I'm sorry. My apologies, Aurore. I tried. This is why I'm not in stand-up. But after she gave me the confidence that this is something they could get behind, I walked out of there, I started crying, and I called the girl who told me about it, Sarah, and I said, I'm going to win this fucking grant. And she just said, God is good. Of course, I doubted myself after I hung up. I was like, oh shit, they're not going to fund someone in recovery from heroin addiction with a felony charge. Tim Maloney, who's one of the program directors and head of Hale, said, you didn't look good on paper, girl, I'm not going to lie. Because some of the advice that Aurora gave me when applying was, when it says, who are you? Don't put your resume in that section. You can attach your resume. Tell us something we're not going to see on your resume. So I put, I'm Tracy Brumfield, I'm 50 years old, and I'm in recovery from heroin addiction. I've been through jail and prison. And we have a problem in our community with reentry connectivity and linkage to social service resources. And I went back and forth on whether to put heroin addiction, but I decided, they needed to know who they were going to fund. I didn't want them to, give me the grant and take it back, right? So, I claimed it. I put my finalist interview on my calendar before I was even told I was a finalist. And I got the call that I was a finalist, super excited. Eric Abner scared the life out of me. I don't know if you know Eric, but he's like, seems to me this could get funded in many places. Why would we do it? And I'm just like, well, Eric, that's potentially true. But it is your resources and mentorship and backing every bit as much as the money that I'll need to do this project. And so I won the Hale Fellow, one of the 2 Hale Fellowships for 2017, which was extremely exciting. It's a $100,000 one-year sabbatical grant where I gladly quit my other 2 jobs, and it got to be your stipend as well as your project money. So in my proposal, I said, I think in 1 year, we can build a brand. I can build a team. I guess I should do that first. I'm not a graphic designer. I'm not an editor. I fancy myself a little bit of a writer, but hadn't been proven on that yet, except for some on-hold commercials I did. And they helped with all that. I met my graphic designer, Chelsea Walter, who's amazing, on the very first day of my fellowship. I was sitting next to her, and I was like, what do you do? Oh, I'm a graphic designer. Oh, yeah. You want to come work for Rise? Sure. Sounded good. But she had been a resident at People's Liberty, so I knew they're no joke, right? And so I knew she had talent. And, part of it is just the energy of people. But putting good people around you was going to be huge for me. And I couldn't have asked for a better team or better support than People's Liberty, honestly. And they brought to my table people I would have never otherwise met. And being a Hale Fellow gave you credibility, I didn't know how swanky they were, honestly. But they got some pull. And I would meet with, the mayor of Dayton and the new clerk of courts and the head of City B. They put so many amazing people around me that I, again, otherwise probably wouldn't have answered my phone call, but got me in a room with. And people got excited about the idea. So we had done a mural in the recovery housing unit, and it was a phoenix, and it says, "Rise Up." So when I was applying, actually somebody was reading my application for me. She goes, you can't keep calling it the newspaper. You have to call it something. So I said, okay, we'll just call it Rise Up News. She's like, you can change it later. I'm like, okay. So then more than one somebody brought to my attention that Rise Up in the jail might mean rise up. You're right. Maybe I shouldn't do that. We'll just call it Rise. And this is where my creativity came in. I created an acronym after I decided the word. I ain't gonna lie. Re-enter into society empowered, boom. And that's actually what I wanted the newspaper to achieve, is to help people come back into their community more empowered than when they came in. Whether it was with information that they didn't know, knowledge they didn't have, or a plan they could have never created without the resources inside the paper. But Rise is 2 things. It is hope and help. The hope comes with the articles and stories and the things that we share in there. And the help is the linkage to these local resources. So Before I had put out 2 issues, I was already worried about what happens in April of 2018 after my fellowship's done. You can't give me this wonderful thing and then make me go back to work in 3rd shift for $10 an hour. And in the famous words of Jake Hodesh, just do your fucking project. We gave you $100,000. Yeah, I mean, you're right. My bad. But, you know, I never wanted Rise to stop, and I didn't ever want Rise to just be here. I wanted it to be all over. But proof of concept happened here. Fortunately, because of my relationship with the jail, I was allowed to come in and pilot the program. And in April 2018, my lovely mentor from the Hale Foundation, Chris Bachnick, came forward and said, you know what, we want to help continue, support you to keep going. And I was just beyond grateful. And not only that, we're going to bring organizations like Procter & Gamble and Duke Energy, Greater Cincinnati Foundation, Fifth Third, Scripps Howard. They're all going to come and help because we think what you're doing is important. I mean, and that meant the world to me, except it scared the shit out of me, and it still does, because, you know, most nonprofits get to fumble around for a couple of years before they approach these people. Not us. We got to figure it out off the rip. We mess up now, and I don't think we'll be able to knock on them doors for a while. But, you know, having confidence to push forward, and, you know, being a publisher of a newspaper. Here, I put one in my little pocket so I can show it. And my editor-in-chief back there, Emma Jenkins, is going to have some for you guys. I hope you pick up a copy. But this is what it looks like. You know, it's super small because they don't like things, you know, extra garbage and refuse in the jail housing units and stuff. I mean, they can have all the Grippo chip bags they want, but, you know, ooh, we wouldn't want more pages. So we keep it small. You know, I mean, some of the back-assward stuff that I deal with in jails and criminal justice is just ridiculous, right? But these are the listings, you know, and we've got to update this picture of me. It was taken on the first day of my fellowship. I was like, you know, Chelsea took it. I was like, and yeah, I think I've aged a lot since then, but no, it's been a fantastic ride. And so we are now our own nonprofit organization. We're called Rise Up News. We publish our newspaper. We've been publishing 10 times a year, but we're thinking about potentially scaling that back a little bit for next year, because one of our greatest goals is not to just expand into other county facilities, which, by the way, we just launched our first out of Cincinnati edition in Dayton, in Montgomery County. So excited. They send us their local resources and we put them in. How cool, right? But to launch a juvenile edition of Rise for our youth detention centers and to have their voices told, and their needs are very different than adults. And a lot of them have been displaced because families been torn apart by addiction and incarceration. So, you know, these are our goals for next year. Lofty, I know, but I feel confident because I continue to have great people around me, and the belief that not only is it necessary, but that we're the ones to address the issue. I think because not only do I have that awesome communications degree, you know, but I've walked the walk. I've been homeless. I've been in active addiction. I've been in jail. I've been in prison. And I understand that hopelessness is feeling trapped without choices. Hope, in my opinion, begins when we see a light or a crack of opportunity, that this isn't our lot in life, right? That we can do more. So I've learned that I actually am pretty creative, which is awesome, you know, because I'm fortunate enough to get to work on this newspaper, and this gets to be my life work, and I will continue to do it until they tell me otherwise. So I really appreciate you guys coming in today. I'm going to leave the floor open for if you guys have questions, but I just really want to thank Jeremy for the opportunity to, you know, what's so cool is that I get to have the privilege of speaking to a wide range of audiences. The high schoolers scare the shit out of me. And my iPhone 10 is not working. You know. Right? I'm gonna work on my my voices. But to appeal to them, the way I try to appeal to them is when they feel so far removed from addiction, but like, how do you play sports or gymnastics or just driving a car, you can get hurt. 1 in 7 who gets prescribed opiates will become addicted. If you're still on them in 30 days, 1 in 3. That's frightening. We lost more people to overdose deaths last year than all the Americans we lost in the Vietnam War combined. Staggering. It's staggering. And now it's not just heroin, it's methamphetamines. I don't think we'll ever solve addiction. It's a disease, but we can keep it in remission. So make no mistake, it is a disease, but it can be treated. Creating empathy and hopefully putting a face to recovery, hopefully calling to arms those who hide behind the veil of anonymity in the rooms of NA and AA. And I don't mean hide, I'm sorry, but to not be ashamed that you have this disease, but to humanize it. Humanize it, you know. So, but thank you guys. The opportunity to be in front of you all is super exciting. Feel free to give to our nonprofit. Monetarily or your talents. You know, we're a 2-man band right now, aren't we? Well, sans our amazing board of directors, you know, and the creatives we outsource our work to. So if you have an area of expertise you'd like to lend to help our nonprofit, we will be more than happy to accept your generosity. So thank you guys very much, and if you have any questions, I'm here. So, thanks. Thank you. Mike, am I good? Are you good? Really? Nobody? Yes?
Do you see this going anywhere outside of it?
Absolutely. So because we just launched in Dayton, so we've taken our proof of concept here. And I really see us as a national newspaper, local resources. And the thing is we're going to produce 3 pages of amazing, informative, empowering content. And we hope to partner with cities, counties, to take ownership of that 1 page that makes it local. To buy that page.
I work at the library, and we kind of are delving into that. And we'd love to have that at the library because there's plenty of people that get out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the library is a known place for those who are displaced and homeless. It's a warm place to go, and those, unfortunately, in active addiction will go into your convenient bathrooms and use. So it is a problem. But yes, we love that. And when we launched, I mean, we were really, really focused on not just putting our newspaper inside the jail, which was our audience, but in the community. But as we've grown, it's still important that we do that, but we see that more going towards our digital space. However, it is important to be in the community. It's just, you know, it takes a village, right? It takes a group of volunteers to help us do that. And so, you know, we're getting our sea legs. You know, we've been a nonprofit for about 8 months. So being in the communities, I think, is important, as well as the correctional facilities. So yeah, talk to Emma behind you or me afterwards, and we'd love to get your information. Awesome. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Do you still have the sweater?
You know what?
Do you still have the sweater?
You know what? I think I do. And because I was, you know, it's time for winter clothes. It snuck up on us, right? And I was pulling stuff down, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I think this is this. I think. Because I was like, oh my God. So I've been talking about it lately, because it really hasn't been part of my story, because depending on the audience I'm talking to, but I recently did a thing called True Theater, and you get a little more time to talk, and he was really, in the course of talking to the gentleman who put it together, he was really fascinated about that part and wanted me to focus on it. But yeah, I do. I'll have to get a picture in it, Emma. Yeah.
We can recommend a good photographer.
Right? Get a free night stay in a treehouse. I'm hip to that, by the way. Yes, ma'am.
Tracy, you should, if you still have the sweater, you should frame it and hang it so you can look at it to remind you.
You know, the frame would have to be about that big, thick, because it's like one of those thick. But yeah, that's actually a really good idea. That's a really good idea. And I also want to say that People's Liberty does this awesome thing where they hire an amazing nonprofit called Cincy Stories to document our fellowship years. And the first half of the Rise documentary won a regional Emmy. Super exciting. I know, right? So if filmmakers in here or anybody just wants to see it, you can catch it on our website. But really beautiful piece of art. But I agree. And my original sketch of the paper that I did, I also have and want to frame. So I'll get to it. But yeah, a wonderful idea. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you said that when you were in prison, you felt like you were being punished for being sick.
Yes.
So in your work, how do you address that perception among people in recovery and also in society?
Right. No, that's a fantastic idea, or question, I'm sorry. In fact, our cover story for the next issue is about an amazing lady named Tyra Patterson who spent 23 years behind bars for a murder she didn't commit. And how did she stay hopeful and positive? You know, and I love her quote that, you know, don't start your life when you get out, begin when you're there. And that's really a lot of the message that we try to put out there, which is take advantage of whatever programming is offered to you in here. You know, I love the joke that if the world's going to end tomorrow, move to Cincinnati because they're 10 years behind everybody else. And that's true of, unfortunately, of our county jail, because there's other counties like Montgomery who are being very progressive, hiring Ohio certified peer support specialists so that they connect you not just with resources but with a person, so that when you get out. But to not be angry, I mean, Tyra is the perfect person to say, how did you hold on to hope? And how did you rise up when you, year after year after year, you know, so my 6 months pales in comparison. But the message I try to give overall is that it's never too late. In the words of LL Cool J, dreams don't expire. Dreams don't have expiration dates, I believe. And my real life started at 50. So I try to say that it's never too late for recovery or to change your career or do something you're passionate. When personal passion meets professional skill set, it's a beautiful thing. And like Daniel was saying, like, you know, he decided he was doing this stuff and it was photography and he was good at it, but it wasn't photographing something he was passionate about. And to get excited to go to work is such a privilege and honor. And I let them know it's going to be hard. You may not get a job except for like Wendy's or something, and you're going to feel frustrated and you're going to hit a wall, and it's going to be hard. But it will be up to you to continue your education, keep walking the walk, and be a patient gardener. So, we got two. So I'll go with the gentleman first.
Are you partnering with any of the local hospitals or any of the, I know there's a couple of programs that some of the physicians at TriHealth and maybe elsewhere are doing to help people with like opioid addiction?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. You know, one of my battle cries is that a lot of organizations, policymakers, even funders talk about us without us. And they don't put people in recovery around the table when they're deciding where to put hundreds of thousands of dollars in funding or policies. But TriHealth actually was one of the ones who's kind of stepped up and reached out to me and was like, hey, we want to have you part of the conversation about we want to begin to bring certified peer support specialists into our emergency departments, so that when people are coming out of an overdose, you know, potentially that peer could talk to them about options. And we want to begin to make that connection. So they're actually, it was Mercy West. Are they TriHealth or not? Anyway, they're really on the forefront. And so they're doing things like that in other counties and stuff. But again, we're a little bit more slow on the uptake. But I do give them credit for opening the door to that. So only in so much as that we've, you know, I personally have been invited to just kind of speak on it. But beyond that, in terms of the organization or newspaper, no. So, yes. Yes, ma'am. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Just, you have experience in homelessness, you might what was helpful in like
Yep.
anything, I guess, might be coming from a place of naivete, but anything that was helpful for you?
Yeah, no, I think, well, I had two great advantages in my homelessness experiences, which is I had a car and a phone. I had the Obama phone, so you had like 250 talk minutes and unlimited text. Very helpful, access to communications is, I think, and for us moving forward as a nonprofit is going to hopefully be, beyond just being great publishers, I hope to be called, as a nonprofit, I hope that we can, in the future, open up the idea for other programs for people right when they hit the door. You know, and we want to start from within, and we'd like to have more programming right at the door. And one of those might be empowering them with telecommunications and having a car, you know, so I could get around. And I did have a quasi-warm place to sleep. I wasn't in a tent under the 3rd Street Bridge, so those were great advantages. But in terms of from the outside, I think those came because of my access to the two other things I learned of, like oh my God, Salvation Army would help you with your rent up to $250 if you had a place and couldn't make ends meet, which we actually wound up taking advantage of when we did get an apartment and it was really hard to make ends meet. They reached out and they helped us, and it was really awesome. So it was, and that was the thing, is that I found it difficult to navigate the social service system with a bachelor's degree, a phone, and a car. So imagine someone who has literacy issues or doesn't have access to transportation or communications. How are they going to navigate the social service system? Yes, ma'am.
What is the reason for that? Is it because it's so just disjointed? I asked what the reasoning was for that. Is it so disjointed as far as social services and things go?
Well,
you have a degree, you know.
Yeah, and I often have said this, that we're very resource rich in Cincinnati. We do have a lot of resources, and those handful that do wraparound services internally. But my thing is yes, we focus on your physical, and this actually came up recently about a frustration with, Emma told me, was it a UC part? They reached out because they were frustrated because people would come in, but they could only, they could only focus on this part. They didn't do the connectivity to other things. That was just not their wheelhouse. And you know, and I get in terms of budgeting and all that, but I just think as we move forward, this is a public and national health crisis. We have to think outside of the box. We have to be, that person on the other line says, well, that's not my job. Nah. How about as a human being, if you're capable to see another in need and answer the call? And that's just being human. And to see suffering. And I implore you, in your cars or whatever, keep a bottle of water, snack, a sweater, a copy of Rise. So you see someone panhandling, maybe it's not money you can give, a bus pass, you know, a bottle of water. These things create humanity within ourselves, and that one act of kindness, and that lady will never know that act of humanity and kindness changed my life forever and my worldview. I had been set up for a worldview change. It just hadn't flipped until that very moment, which is amazing, you know. But I believe that to be true. So, yes, ma'am.
You kind of just touched on this, but to me it sounds like the way that you talk about turning from a place of need to a place of helping others and reaching out, it sounds almost like it's inevitable. Is that true to your experience? Did it feel inevitable to you?
I think it's like chicken or the egg, right? Like for me, it was like, was my path always meant for this hardship so that I could be of service from a place of authenticity? Or is it that I got to this place of authenticity because of that path of hardship? I don't know. I think when you talk, most of you have heard about the 12 steps of AA and NA. And I believe this is a beautiful model of how to go from one way of being to another. And it's not just about addiction, but it is to look at our self-centered nature, even our ego and our vanity, right? To being of service to others. To be honest, transparent. To look at our resentments and our pain and, leave the pain, take the lesson, you know, and that's hard to do for anyone. And so for me, I would love to say it was inevitable. This was God's had in plan, but it was for me. I had choices all along the way, right? I believe choices give us the illusion of control, because I don't think we control shit. I can intend to go to work, but I can't control whether I get there. It could be traffic, I could be in a wreck, I mean, my car won't start. There could be a multitude of things that happen. The only thing I control is my attitude and how I react. And I still will be that person in the car, as blessed as I am, going, why didn't she fucking put on her blinker? Why would I get so upset? It's like, wait, I take it right back. I don't want to put that bad energy out there. But to check myself when I become that, you know, it's all about me, you know? So I hope I answered that in a really long way. Have you disseminated that? I think we're close to. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
So I was part of the Greater Cincinnati Pet Therapy group,
Oh, okay.
and I was curious if they are active in the prison system.
Actually, so I was in Marysville and then in Dayton Correctional, and they actually have, I don't know if it's probably not the same thing, but they train dogs to be therapy dogs. Okay. And there it's called Circle Tail. It's a really great program, and I think they have a lot similar programs across the country. And then in Marysville, they rescue are they Great Danes? What are the ones that the dog races? Greyhounds, I'm sorry, my bad. They rescue greyhounds who've been kind of put out to pasture because they're no longer of use in the racing community. So it's a beautiful thing. And I think it's a great thing on both sides. Those who are inside get to find this empathy. You know, it's crazy how we can have empathy for an animal that's suffering before we have empathy for ourselves, you know? And I think it's great to open that door to that connection and to just be of service to the community in that way. So, but yeah, I mean, we could use all kinds of programming and diverse, and we have to think more outside the box moving forward, both in jails and in prisons. So, but yeah, that's been the challenge in jails, and why you can become institutionalized so much quicker is that you don't get outside. It's all circulated air, everything's concrete and steel and loud and colorless. And now more and more people are doing their time in county jail because judges are encouraged not to send felony 5s and felony 4s to prison. Mine was the lowest felony at 5, and I got 6 months in prison, you know. But that was because I kept failing at getting well their way, and it became punitive. But I think the more we can think outside the box and we get correctional facilities that are willing to try new things, I think that's our greatest challenge. So, yeah. Hope I answered it. We good? Yes. All right, thanks everybody. I really appreciate it.